Hello and welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's 12:30, it's Monday, so that must mean it's the Monday Club. I'm Tony Haggerty, and joining me as ever is the wonderful Amy, as you say, Canavan. How you doing, Amy? How was your weekend?
As you say, Tony, it was all right. No, it was good. I had a really good weekend, actually. Yeah, I did, actually. Thank you.
No doubt buoyed by the Scotland-England result on Friday night.
Yeah, that was terrific. Going into that, every single one of us would have took that result. Would have bit your hand off at it. But now you kind of have to sit there and you're like, wow, we really could have walked away with 3 points here, and we probably deserved it. I thought, to a man, absolutely outstanding. And obviously all the comments have been there over the weekend. But I think there's just one thing I'd quite like to touch on just at the start there, that if you look at any of the ratings, like, how shocking is it that has anybody watched Callum McGregor against England? You've been watching him get like sixes. I think Sky had him at a 6. I think even some England players. Callum McGregor was outstanding, and I think because he was so quiet, I think it was Gazetta. I think they called him the blanket. And I think that's amazing, because that's just what he done. He totally and utterly covered, and I know all the plaudits are going to Billy Gilmore, but it was the work that McGregor done, to tee him up, to set him up. And I think it was the McGregor of old that we really saw against England, and he was just really quite, commanding, but in a cool, calm and composed way. He broke up play really well, and just, he was that body in the midfield that you really needed. And I thought he was outstanding. But like I say, to a man, we could go through every single one of them, and the fact that you're looking at, the money the numbers that gets chucked about for Phil Foden, for Mason Mount, for Raheem Sterling, Stephen O'Donnell was just as good.
Cool. We'll maybe touch upon Scotland before the end of the programme, but good opening. I like that, Callum. I agree entirely with what you said. And as you say, comment was a wee kind of in-joke with commenters on YouTube saying that Amy is fond of saying the words "as you say." So we'll monitor that going along. That's the idea. And also, it's Mondays. It wouldn't be complete, the Monday Club, without our resident bus convener. What do you say, the bus man extraordinaire? How are you, Russell?
Oh, as you say, Tony, I'm doing well, thanks, mate. I'm in the studio, mate. I thought we would sort of show off some of the studio's fantastic sort of backdrop today. So rather than sitting in the mundane studio official HQ area, I thought we'd come to the bar, mate, and make it a wee bit more civilised, you know what I mean?
Now, that's kind of keeping with the theme, because you've turned up at HQ there for pre-season. First day of pre-season, you're reporting back to HQ and didn't want to sit in the mother seat chair. Marvellous. Celtic have reported back for pre-season. All the usual suspects turning up except the international players. And a wee bit of news today that Celtic have taken up the option of extending Anthony Ralston's contract for another 12 months. Now, the strapline along the bottom says, "What will the new era Celtic look like for the first match under Ange Postecoglou?" Are these small indicators, boys? Do you think that he's going to go with some younger players and maybe have a look at Anthony Ralston and make up his mind? Because there were some clubs sniffing around Anthony Ralston, but they've activated that clause and he's got another year.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously first and foremost, I mean, we all know about JP's famous countdown. If he was on the show today, that would be sitting at 29 days till the next match. We've spoke about an abundance of positions that need to be covered. No two ways about it. I mean, there's areas all over the pitch that we're going to need bodies in, first team players as well. And I just think perhaps Ralston's been kept on for an extra year as a safety net. I don't want to say that disrespectfully, but he's been at Celtic a numerous amount of years now. He's never convinced any of the managers that have been in charge of that time that he would be a regular player there. But such is the unknown quantity of trust in just Leo Connor in that position, and such is the time it takes Celtic to get deals over the line for new signings, you can't help but feel maybe Ralston is a safe pair of boots, for want of a better phrase, at right back, just in the meantime till Ange has a chance to get his full overhaul and full flow, because the countdown's on now, and you've got someone like Ralston who at the end of the day does have decent SPFL experience. He's played in Europe before as well. You might be looking at that as a a safer bet than perhaps bringing Leo Connor. I think played a lot of his spell at Tranmere in midfield, as opposed to the actual right back position we thought he was. So it might just be one of those ones where it's a needs must right now. Do I think Anthony Ralston is going to be the long-term right back at Celtic? I'd be happy to be proved wrong, but I can't see it.
Amy, it's less than a month, or about a month, till we do play Midtjylland in the... I think that's how you pronounce it, Midtjylland. I think I said Midtjylland the other day on the pod. Somebody corrected me and laughed at my pronunciation. So Midtjylland, or as they're now known in my house, the Danes. What's your thoughts on that, about Ralston? Are you enthused by that, or does that worry you slightly? Or
I don't think anybody can really be enthused by it. You know, it's I think Russell was spot on there. I think he's made 20 appearances maybe in the last 5 years, something like that. I appreciate he's loan deals out as well, but I have, you know, and I've said it on this pod, so I can't go back and really backtrack, but I don't personally mind Ralston, you know, and I think there's been times over the last season that I'd have gave him a little start and just, you know, let's see the ball rolling again. You know, he's had loan spells out, Dundee United, St Johnstone as well, I think maybe. So let's see what's built upon, because it's been a wee while maybe since we've seen him. And saying that, going forward though, the fact that he didn't, you know, make any cameo appearances at the tail end of last season, then that doesn't set me in a lot of stead. Because you're thinking, wow, he couldn't get ahead of John Joe Kenny. And it wasn't that John Joe Kenny was putting in Stephen O'Donnell-esque performances. You know, he wasn't setting the ground alight. It was really, really bog standard. And there was nothing, you know, he wasn't the shining light in any team. And I appreciate it was tough for him to come in, but there were opportunities that, you know, we could have turned to Ralston. He obviously made the bench a few times, so it wasn't the case of a fitness issue. So he was an option, but we never really turned to him. So going forward, it's like I say, it's definitely not something that we could be enthused by. And I get what Russell's saying. Maybe again, it's a safety net, but then what sort of safety net is it? It could be a safety net with thousands of holes upon it, because we don't know really what the safety is, because we don't know what assurance we've really got with them, because it's been so long since we've really seen them play. So it's not, you know, if this is the new era that we're looking into, the new era that I have no idea how that's going to shape up to be, it's not the glamour first sort of move, first sign that we really wanted to see. It's not the wow. It's not a big one, is it?
You mentioned a name there, though, and Ange would have watched him at close quarters on Friday night, Stephen O'Donnell. Now, he has many a detractor, but Stephen O'Donnell won a few more admirers, I think, the other night, on Friday night, with a sterling performance against England, against some top quality players. Now, I'm not saying Stephen O'Donnell can perform like that every week, but he said it himself in the after-match interview that he was buoyed by the fact that the manager picked him, because he'd read all the criticism. Now, this is a guy that's been constantly linked with a move to Celtic. Would you like to see him sign for Celtic, Amy? Or should Celtic look elsewhere? But if you're Ange and you're watching Stephen O'Donnell for the first time on Friday night, you couldn't help but be impressed.
Absolutely. And as we all know, you know, Ange was there, so he definitely would have, you know, caught the eye. It's interesting, I put out a tweet, and I was like, obviously, Stephen O'Donnell, some performance, and then I got a raft of replies really going, you know, sign him. And I never really interacted with him, because then I was kind of a bit like, that's not why the tweet was sent out. There's no denying it, you know, he was terrific the other night. And I think that was, you know, there was a combination of things there. I think that he felt, obviously, in the post-match interview, which is a fantastic interview, he comes out and says, you know, he just wanted to repay it to Steve Clarke, to repay it to his teammates, to his friends, his family. So he had that sort of support network. You know, it wasn't a disaster against the Czechs last week. It was that there was a few errors, and I think there's no denying it that the atmosphere definitely got to him. And he certainly wasn't the only one. You know, there's no point just picking out on him, but I think he's just a little bit of the whipping boy, of course, as well. You know, we're guilty of it ourselves. We're talking about maybe the English would look upon him that, oh, he only plays for Motherwell. we're all guilty of it, that we're looking at, wow, do we really want a Motherwell player in the Scotland setup? But you know what, he's been the best option, and it definitely turned out to be that way on Friday. But going back then, you know, if we look at such a big occasion this time last week, getting to him for against the Czech Republic, then will that happen at Celtic? You know, maybe after just one decent performance, I wouldn't be jumping on it. You know, there was a few people, like I say, like, right, let's sign him straight away, let's get him in. He'd definitely be a solid option. You know, he knows the league inside and out. He was obviously at Kilmarnock before he was at Motherwell, but don't forget, he had that really good season under Clark at Kilmarnock, and he definitely, there's no denying that he left thinking that he was going to get like a decent, a bigger move, and it never really transpired. And then I think it was quite rushed. I think the season might even started by the time that he signed for Motherwell. I could be wrong, but it was, if not, it was running it close. You know, and it was a local club for him, so it all sort of fitted in nicely. And again, and he's performed well for Motherwell, but he's not been a wow, let's all check him out. Again, solid enough performer, but would I really be, you know, again, would it be that sort of signing? If Ange signs him, would we be all like, wow, this is fantastic, what a great signing, we've got him on board? I don't think so. I don't think he'd set the world alight. Again, perhaps a solid enough one, and maybe it's Ange wanting, you know, he could familiarise himself with the league. You're bringing in somebody who knows the setup, but it's certainly not going to be one that's going to be getting all the glitz and the glam.
Russell, you're an advocate of players that know the league and the setup. So if you're Ange and you've watched him, and as Amy said there, you wouldn't sign a player on the basis of one performance, but if information's telling you this guy's been linked before and it's not going away, and you need players, would you see him as a safe option or a good option?
Yeah, I think it draws similarities with when Strachan signed Paul Telfer. I appreciate that, you know, the age, there's a big difference. Telfer was a lot further on, but I think it would be a safe option. I certainly think right now as well, it's Celtic, I've got a feeling are maybe a phase of downsizing slightly anyway. I think, you know, the bigger earners, like your Enchams, your Ayers, your Edwards, are all going to be heading for the exit door. I don't envisage we'll be bringing in players on huge money. I think as well, I mean, we've tried the glitz and the glamour that Amy talks about in this troubled right back role. If we look at Jeremy Toljan, he came from Borussia Dortmund. John Joe Kenny came from the bright lights of the EPL, as did Moritz Bauer. I think Stoke had just been relegated, but he was an international defender. Frimpong came from Manchester City and had a good 6 months, but let's be honest, last season none of us were sad that he left in the January. In fact, we were pleasantly surprised at the transfer fee we got. So if we look since Lustig left at the replacements we've made, we've sourced bigger clubs right backs that have came from more glamorous leagues, and it hasn't really worked. Stephen O'Donnell on Friday was on approximately 100th what his opponents were a week in terms of wages, 100th. And was absolutely outstanding, showed what he can do in the big stage. Again, I think very much like Ralston, was easy to get over the line to trigger that extension for a year. I don't think there'd be many obstacles in the road of bringing Stephen O'Donnell in. Right now, Ange's going to need bodies, like I've already said. Would you take Stephen O'Donnell on a 2-year deal right now, just because it makes sense, not perhaps because you're clamouring for it? I think there is pros to that deal. I really do. I think we've got to accept it right now. We are in such a huge overhaul with the squad, all our own doing, not Ange's, that there's going to need to be some sort of signings made that have short-term, you know, you can get in the door quickly and perhaps have a short-term impact whilst trying to build a strategy or identifying targets for long-term roles in those positions. Do you know what I mean?
Another one from Paul was sent in a comment, and thank you for all your contributions on the social media channels. He says Stephen O'Donnell isn't a great standard, but he's above Ralston at least. Ralston wouldn't stand out at Cliftonville. Well, there you go. That's
fair enough.
That's enough towards Anthony Ralston. And on that subject of defenders, Celtic have been linked with Oxford United defender today. Rob Atkinson. That's the fella. I nearly said Ron Atkinson there. had it in my head, don't say Ron Atkinson. Don't say Ron Rob Atkinson's his name. Played 44 times for Oxford United last season and he scored twice. Bristol City are also looking at him as well. Oxford have seemingly quoted a 1.6 million fee for him. But it's been reported that Celtic are really keen. He's 22, young defender, comes with some kind of pedigree. Again, not a household name or one that would get Celtic fans off the chair, but maybe if they're doing their scouting and they've looked at this guy, he fits the bill as a young Ange Postecoglou prototype player that could come in and maybe do a job, and he would work his magic on him and turn them into the finished article, because that's the way he seems to like to build his teams, with young guys coming in and he makes them better over a period of time. Do you think that suits that? Fits that criteria, Amy? I think that would be the thinking behind that.
Well, you've got to take obviously the only thinking again, like you say, is obviously he's far from a household name. You've got to hope that obviously age is definitely on his side in that sort of respect. It's definitely going to be, any time that there's any other sort of suitors in, and if he's in a little bit of demand, then of course, then there attracts that extra little bit of attention. I think perhaps maybe the hesitation I would have, and maybe thinking it's a little bit dubious, is that can I really see, Ange Postecoglou, who's only been here, a matter of days, is he really looking at Oxford United? And if he is, then that's fine, fair enough. But if not, who's doing the scouting? Who else? We have no idea what sort of backroom team is in shape, whose roles what, or, who's even, what the roles even are, if it's a director of football we've got coming in, or a head of recruitment, whatever it may be. So I think that's where I have a little bit of hesitation as well. Who's looking at this guy? Who is it that's sort of, looking at him and going, he could be decent for us? And if it's Ange, then absolutely, and you get behind that, and that's terrific that he's hit the ground running. Obviously, he's down south, obviously in London, and if he's maybe talking to people, and of course he's going to have contacts. But it's quick to have it been reported that we've got an interest, when really it's came out of nowhere. It's not one that, now my God, Celtic are linked to everybody. Always, every single transfer window. So it's not even one of those that, we've been linked to before sort of thing. So there's a little bit of history. This is all came pretty much out of the blue. And that's probably where my hesitation is that who is looking for him? Who's picked him out? Because it's, like I say, it's not a household name. He's not been like, wow, he's somebody that we want. I've never heard of any sort of interest up until now. So there's definitely a little bit of hesitation there from me.
I totally agree. I hoped that Ange Postecoglou is scouting these players, but I think, as you say, the time scale in which to do that doesn't stack up. So somebody is making these calls, or maybe just putting these names in front of them, and and then putting it to the team, and they're leaking it through media and saying, well, Celtic want them, or they're interested. Because I think Bristol City are also in from maybe trying to flush them out as well. So all sorts of things could be happening there. Russell, your thoughts on Rob Atkinson?
Yeah, I don't have any thoughts on Rob Atkinson as a player, as I've never heard of him, with all due respect to our Rob. I think we're going to need to maybe get a wee bit used to it this season, that there's going to be signings that we've never heard of before. The one thing that is strange, like Amy's touching on there, though, is, as far as I was aware, Nick Hammond's left the building. So the head of recruitment, we don't have one right now. We've not heard of any appointments of a new one or a new scouting team or anything like that. Is Ange going off old player lists that were maybe already sitting around the HQ, back to HQ again? But I don't know. I had a great chat with Jared yesterday, who, if you remember, he does Celtic Down Under pod, and he came on with Paul and the team a couple of weeks ago to discuss Ange. And he pitched a couple of players to me yesterday that were not on my radar. I can't remember the names. I think one's called Sainsbury, of all surnames. All their supermarkets are available. But he apparently is 31, playing in the Chinese league right now, and I think was captain at times for Australia under Ange. And he says he would be a beast and an affordable centre-back who loves defending and dominating. And those sort of signings, to me, maybe tickle me a bit more, because Ange would have previous experience with them, and he would have had a huge say in that transfer, which I think what Amy's alluding to is, who's having the say in these these deals right now, that's where the concern creeps in. But by all accounts, if teams like Bristol City are looking at him, again, I don't want to sound negative, but I do believe as part of our downsizing right now, that might be the ilk of team we're competing with for potential targets this summer, sadly being the case. Not because, again, we're going to all sit here and say, oh yes, Oxford centre-half for ranting and raving about them, but we're not going to write anyone off at this stage either. Like I say, I think there's going to be a season here where we've maybe signed maybe even 4 or 5 names that are not household names. Let's be honest, the manager isn't one, so it might be something we all need to get used to and trust. It would be nice to know whose judgment we're trusting on it, though. Like Amy's saying, I would like to see us have to put our faith in the manager's judgment for a lot of the signings we're making. You can't help but feel this one might not be of one from his radar as opposed to one that was already on some sort of sheet.
The one positive, though, as I said there, is that he was actually active at a football match on Friday night, watching some Celtic players that were playing for Scotland, but also just being around that football environment and doing his work straight away. So he's in London. He'll be doing a hell of a lot because a lot of deals happen in London and stuff like that. So sure. He must be very active because, as we say, it's a month till Celtic play their first game. So there'll be all sorts of plates being spun at the moment. One would conjecture and one would think. Now, another name also that's not going away is the boy Charlie Wyke from Sunderland, a striker who he scored 26 last season. He's got something like 34 and 92. And, he seems to be keen to come to Celtic. I think he's going to reject a deal at Sunderland. But I was a bit concerned because I read this morning Kevin Phillips, legendary goal scorer on your side, and he said this, thinks that Charlie Wyke could do a job at Celtic, but only if you give him the right service. You need to play in a certain way, and you need to be direct. And he said Sunderland went back to front quite a lot, quite early at times. And he said if you're playing with wingers, that would also provide an option for him around the penalty spot. But he says his signing would be an indication as to how Postecoglou would play. And he says, I'm surprised that Celtic are maybe signing him. He says, because he says, for me, he's more than an impact sub, or he'll just be like an impact sub. He'll probably not play every week. Now, Amy, if you're going to sign a striker, you need him to play, do you not?
We certainly do. We need to have that out-and-out striker who can play week in, week out, because that, like as somebody obviously touched upon, we're going to lose Edward. That's a given. Who knows on what planet and where Lee Griffiths is right now. I don't know if are we bringing Bio back or are we not. It's a tough one there as well. Albion the Yeti so far has certainly not proved to be the main man here. So we're definitely looking for, like you say, that go-to. And if he's only an impact sub, or those comments are certainly not the most
That's Kevin Phillips saying that.
Yeah.
Kevin Phillips knows a bit about scoring goals. So it's not everybody's view. It's just a view, and I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm have a downer on Charlie Wyke because he might be a very good player, but as Russell says, I'm not pretty au fait with Charlie Wyke. I don't know too much about him, so I'm taking the word of a man who put the ball regularly in the net for Sunderland and England and was pretty good at it. So.
Certainly was. And that's the sort of guys that obviously you want to turn to. You need to try and build a little bit of background on the guy. Well, you want to turn to somebody who knows how to do and how to do it. So it's not the most, it's not going to sell me. But you can't just take that. It's a great contribution, but it's not the most, I don't know, encouraging sort of comments. But like you say, everyone's going to have a different opinion, and that is just Phillips.
It's not a ringing endorsement of his talent, let's put it that way. Yeah. But there seems to be suggestions that this deal's pretty far down the line and the boys keen to come. So if that's the manager who's picked him out again and scoped him out, then you trust his judgment, and he might be part of that new era jigsaw. Russell, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we only need to look at last summer. We were linked with a League One striker in England who'd scored a lot of goals. Were we blown away at the time at the prospect of signing him? I don't think so. revisionism occurs, of course, because as this season progressed and he played at a higher level, he showed what he could do, Mr. Tony. And I won.
His name, Russell. Didn't want to mention his name.
I know, but who cares? We'll do it.
Move on.
But I think once bitten, twice is shy. So maybe we've looked at the league. I don't know why I said that. I don't even think that makes any sense. But I think if we look at League One, and you look at the example of what Tony's went on to achieve at Brentford, and you've got someone who's playing not in the greatest Sunderland side of all time, and he's banged 26 goals away, available again at an affordable price. I don't think there's much of a risk element in it. And again, if he's hungry to come to Celtic, then that is a refreshing change for players joining Stepping Stone FC, Tony. we want players that are desperate to come here. And I know that doesn't mean every Tom, Dick and Harry. I don't mean that. I would love to play for Celtic. It's not because they're not going to sign me, are they? But I think that record of 26 goals is pretty impressive in League One. It's a competitive environment. Again, we don't know who's sourcing these players right now. But I just think, sometimes you need to give players a chance to go up to a higher level and prove themselves. And sometimes players play better with better players. So, yeah, that's not one that concerns me too much if we do bring him in.
Well, I'll throw another name at you. Nobody really heard of Gary Hooper when he came north of the border.
Yeah, totally.
And Gary Hooper set the header alight up here. So, as I say, I was only mentioning Kevin Phillips' comments because they were fresh and I'd read them this morning. So I don't have any great opinion on Charlie Wyke because I don't really know much about him. I will go and watch stuff about him and see. And then if he does sign, then I will judge him when he's playing in a Celtic jersey. But something that does interest me and excites me a wee bit is the fact that Marian Shved, remember him? He might get a shot under Postecoglou because he certainly fits his prototype player because he's a wide man and he likes playing with wingers. And they're saying that Marian Shved could come in from the cold and possibly get a chance to step up to the plate. Now, Marian Shved's another kind of Tom Rodzik player for me. They did compile a DVD of some of his greatest goals and he looked the part. And then he came in and played in the Champions League qualifiers and scored against Nom Kalju, and everybody wanted to see more. And then he just completely drifted and faded out the picture. Now, if this is a manager that plays with out-and-out wingers, surely Shved should come into the reckoning at some point and possibly get a chance to see if he can cut the mustard. Amy, your thoughts on Marian Shved coming in from nowhere?
I think the fans would definitely be happy with that. I think there was a little bit of, as you say, it's maybe a little bit Tom Rogic in the sense that it was, you could compile some of his greatest goals together, but other than that, but perhaps the flip side to that is other than that, we've not really seen a lot of him. So when he's came in, he's done a decent enough job. And I think everyone was, I can't really remember why, but I just remember everybody really catching on to him and really wanting, I think really quite simply wanting him to do well. I think it was always, remember, like Unleash Shved, because there was the training pics and there was a few videos and, he looked the business. And I think as well, he came with a bit of a decent name. I think perhaps when he came in, there was a bit of an expectation that he would be coming into the side straight away, and everything sort of be taking time. And it was almost like, ultimately, if he does come back into the fold, it will be like a new signing. There's no denying that. So that sort of like sets exactly where he is. But he's obviously the wide man. I think, like you say, remember that. I think everybody remembers that goal, and he took it extremely well. So it's like you say, it's a name that totally and utterly escaped my mind, and it is ultimately a new signing if it comes true.
Another comment coming in here that says, if we have taken up the option on Ralston, why not do the same with Griffiths, who has scored or assisted a goal every 42 minutes throughout his entire career? Now that's some stat.
Fantastic. I mean, we're looking at trying to resurrect maybe players that's not worked with in the past. I think what it does tell you first and foremost about Shved is that signing policy has to come to an end now. We cannot keep putting players onto managers that the managers know nothing about and then are far more likely not to take a shine to because they've not had any say-so in it. He might not fit their types of characteristics of the players they're looking for, playing the sort of roles that they're looking for in their team. So that to me, Shved's such a glaring example of where we got it so badly wrong in the past sort of few years transfer windows since sort of Rodgers sort of spat the dummy about it. Is he worth another chance? Well, look, we're paying his wages. You know, what's the point in not giving him a clean slate and just treating him like a Celtic player, part of the squad, and seeing how he does in pre-season? It's worth a go, isn't it? If it's not going to work out, then cut your losses eventually, but there's no harm in trying. As for Lee Griffiths, to me right now, if we're re-signing Anthony Ralston, you re-sign Lee Griffiths, it is just as straightforward as that. If we're talking about safety nets earlier, I'm saying about the Ralston deal, because maybe the games will come too soon for us to have our full recruitment process. I think the whole season's coming too soon in terms of trying to get a prolific goal scorer in, who knows the league inside out and has a record such as what's just been posted there by Paul. I think Griffiths is a absolute shoe-in for another year. Whatever's happened. I felt he was mismanaged at the start of the season for all his own faults. I think Celtic need to take responsibility that they acted a bit petulant with it by not taking him on that pre-season tour, and he never really got going after that, despite the odd important goal, notably at McDermott Park. For me, he's got to come back in for another year. We're going to need folk like that, especially what we've just been saying there. There's going to be more unknown quantities joining this squad than normal before. Griffiths is a known entity. He knows the league. He gets it. And I also think Griffiths would have been watching those Scotland games just feeling super, super cheesed off. And I hope he was. And I hope he thought that should have been me. I'm 31 years old. I mean, I hadn't last won a European Golden Boot at 31, you know. I think Griffiths should have been at that tournament. And I think he might have the bit between his teeth next year. And I would not like to see him at another SPFL team either, which I think is most likely would be his go-to destination, as I don't think the reputation that follows someone like Griffiths now, because of the sort of past few years in the wilderness, not all through his own doing, by the way, but I think his most likely destination would be within our league. And that gives me huge fear when we've got an option we can take up there for a year, you know what I mean?
I also think that if you're part of, you know, we are entering a new era, so no stone should be left unturned.
Agreed.
Regards to Shved, regards to Griffiths. You know, you activate that clause in Griffiths' contract, give him the last chance saloon, as Amy said last week, as you've just alluded to there. But guys like Shved, you've got nothing to lose. And if this man likes playing with wingers, this guy was bought as a winger, wasn't he? Supposed to be a wide man. So, you know, you have to turn around and say, well, we've got this at our disposal. There is no harm in having a look at him and moving forward. He could be part of the new era. As you say, a lot of names that might come in that might not be instantly recognisable, but they're coming in because the new era's kicking in and our new manager thinks they could do a job. We're going to have to get used to that. We might not lash out in 5, 6, 7 million pound players. You know, that's just a fact. As you say, the downsizing will continue, but we're still going to try and get value for money and utilise Ange Postecoglou's contacts in and around football with players he's maybe worked with before, or players that he's seen in opposition playing in either the Australian League or the Japanese League, and he knows they could maybe do a job. So, you know, you have to embrace that concept. Not every signing is going to be a blockbuster and get you, as I say, up off your seat. So that's fine. But what you would like his players to come in, wouldn't you? You know, at this moment in time, we're pretty threadbare and light. And again, it's been rumoured again that Ryan Christie's the subject of Monaco, Nice, Leicester, Burnley, you know, Southampton, keen on him. So you have to say he is going to be out the door. You know, so regardless of how he's played or if he plays in any more part in the Euros, he's going to go out the door. I mean, I don't know how you feel about Ryan Christie, but I'm of the opinion that players that want to go should be allowed to leave. Yeah. You know, and let this new broom come in and take it from there. You on board with that, Amy? Seeing you nodding.
Yeah, there's no point, like, it's a cliche, but there's no point keeping an unhappy player. You know, if he wants out, just let him be out. It's a waste of a wage, it's a waste of a body. and it's there's just really no need. I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head there as well. We are how many? What did you say, Russell? We're 29 days away, something like that. We are scrambling right now. Look at us, and we are discussing that it's like, oh, we'll need to start getting used to this, as in that we're talking about the future as a million miles away. We're only 29 days away. We shouldn't need to be about to get used to it. We should be in that stage of getting used to it. There should be bodies coming through the door. Not the only like revolving door we're really talking about is players going out right now, and then the players coming back in. We're just really like regurgitating the players that we've wasted perhaps like over the last few years. I think just going back to Shved as well, and as you're kind of talking about like that whole environment, and perhaps maybe the same with Griffiths, but I think more than Shved, you've got to hope that perhaps now he's walking into a side that it's not the complete success story that it was when he came in. The starting 11 at that time was pretty much made all by a few, substitutions. There was that squad of perhaps 13, 14 that you knew week in, week out were going to be the stars, and that was the invincible side and the double treble, I think, at that time as well. So it was a really steady ship. This is a sinking ship right now, so there's a chance for Shved to walk in here, and it is now like it is a new team. He's not got all these familiar faces around him. It's not as tough to get into the starting 11, so it's a totally and utterly different format that he's walking into. And perhaps it's the same as Griffiths, he's not having to come in and play second fiddle to Edward. He has the chance again to be the main man, and he has to, that's another factor that we have to chuck into this and hope that that's what he wants to be. You have an opportunity here to be Celtic's number one striker again. It's been a few years since you've been that, because Dembele came in and totally, knocked them away after that game against, the hat-trick game for Dembele, and then that was kind of it, because he came in and again, I think it was so tough. I think remember at that time we were all devastated because Griffiths has picked up the injury, and we were like, we're having to turn to Dembele, and obviously he goes and puts in that sort of performance. But since then, he's never really been the number one go-to for Celtic, and perhaps that's what he likes to be and needs to be, because then it's that sort of want, need and desire. So again, there's an opportunity for him now, because this is a totally and utterly different setup we're walking into. And this is obviously the new era, but before we even get to that new era right now, this is just worrying. It's scrambling, it's amateur, and it's so disappointing. You're looking around every single day and we're like, what is this? And then we don't know, obviously it's not Ange's fault that he's not up here, but you've not really got a manager in place. You've got no idea who his backroom staff are. Are John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan taken? Don't get started on Gordon Strachan. Is Gavin Strachan taken? Training today as well, come back in. Who is taking it? So it's just extremely messy.
I mean, my thoughts are that if the likes of Edouard, Christie and Ayer are going to leave, Russell, we try and do those deals and we get as much as we can for them as soon as possible. We don't need it to drag on, because we need that cash for some sort of rebuild. We get as much as we can for them. You can speculate the figures all you want, but teams will only pay what they're worth. So we get that chunk of money in for those three, because these three guys seem to be the ones who have agitated for a move and were unhappy not to get it last year and want out the door. So I would say let's get them out the door within the next 10 days if we can, because Celtic need to focus, as Amy said, on what's in front of them now. They need some sort of rebuild to start happening with the full management team coming in and players coming through the door as opposed to leaving, because you need to see some kind of structure. And I'll go back to something that you said a while ago. Nir Beaton's going to play in the defence in the Champions League qualifiers, isn't he?
It's looking likely right now. I mean, we need to be clear as well. This is none of Ange's doing.
No, we're not saying
this is not. No, I know you're not. But I just want to kind of re-emphasise that any sort of doom and gloom that we're maybe sounding like here right now is not based on Ange Postecoglou's potential ability or lack of in the job. He'll be judged far further down the line, in my opinion, on his credentials to be Celtic boss. What he's walking into though is a storm, and it is. I can't think of a time. Maybe Lennon's first time round, where so many players are going to come in, and so many obviously, as we've discussed, are heading for the departure door. And I think you're absolutely spot on. We have to get these guys out the door, the sooner the better, because also that can then dictate what players it is you're targeting to bring in, because you know how much money you have to spend. If you don't know that, then you're going to be looking at Oxford centre-backs and Stephen O'Donnell's of the world. I'm not meaning that disrespectful, I just mean they cost less money. But if you've somehow managed to win a watch and sparked a bidding war or something like that for Edouard and got maybe the maximum amount of money for him, let's say 25 million on the most optimistic of optimistic levels. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to be the fee. Just, imagine that would be like extra, maybe 10 that you'd banked on having. Before you know it, you can look for better calibre of players that perhaps Angie had in mind for getting further down the line, maybe next summer or something. So we do need to be proactive in this now, and I appreciate he's not had long to, he's only just started pre-season today. So surely normally the steps would be, you would assess what you've currently got, identify areas that need strengthened, and then look for players that are going to fit in with the team shape, tactics, league that you're playing in. Right now he's got to do that in a heck of a short time. I don't envy his task, but it's a challenge that we're all just going to need to embrace. I just feel that right now JP made a great point on Thursday last week. Now, whilst we can't have players that don't want to be there, bids have to come in for said players for them to leave. Bids didn't come in for these guys last autumn time. Lennon was frustrated by the fact that they'd made it clear they wanted to leave and couldn't get them out the door. But it turns out there was only, one bid that was made for one player, and it was seen as derisory. Fair enough. What are we going to... We can't expect us to just... As much as I'm in a rush for these guys to be, departing, it also has to be for a fair figure and a fair amount of money.
And so far, bids haven't come in for any of them this summer either.
I know.
So my thought is that the strapline says, what will the new era Celtic look like for the first match under Ange Postecoglou? That's fine. We can speculate as to what it will look like, but I want to see it start to kick in. I want the new era to start tomorrow, or yesterday. That kind of thing. I want to see things happening now because the clock is ticking. You're going into a European Champions League European qualifier, and we've exempted them from criticism on that.
Yeah, 100%.
Ange has a free hit at this. If he does anything in this, he is, as I said before, a miracle worker.
Yep.
He will, if he gets Celtic through any of those rounds, he's a miracle worker.
I agree with that.
And I think that he just has to start now assembling his team. What are we going to look like moving forward? What 4 weeks till they play their first competitive game? It isn't a lot of time. He has inherited this situation. Again, we hope he's working away behind the scenes and pulling these things together and getting a list of targets that he wants. But as Amy said there as well, it's pretty shambolic that it's got to this point. We are scrambling. And the minute you're scrambling, clubs also know that as well. They'll hike the price.
Yeah, that's true.
Players that you're interested in, whereas a young guy from Oxford suddenly becomes a £1.6 million player.
Mm-hmm.
Therein lies the rub, and that's what Celtic will be up against moving forward.
Yeah, I think as well, Tony, obviously I touched on earlier that perhaps there's players in other markets that we would never even think of that Ange has identified. But what's just occurred to me as you were talking there was, what's the first thing Ange had to do when he took the Celtic job, when he flew over here? Quarantine.
Yeah.
So, again, these guys can't even get into the training, but you're kind of chopping now 10 days off the 29 if you're looking for players outside the UK. How daunting is that? That's just occurred to me. There I was doing the sums. I thought, if we bring anyone from overseas, they have to immediately quarantine for 10 days. So guys like domestically that in our league and from down south may well be the market that we're going to need to attract, which might not be one. I'm sure Ange's familiar with the majority of the market, or at least a good percentage of it. And the English game is still the most viewed in the world, isn't it? Really. But what you would think is the interesting signings that I'm looking forward to seeing Ange do, like that would be from maybe the J League or the A League or someone from Europe that he's worked with at national team level and things like that. That they're really exciting. But you're now beginning to start to slowly realise the chances of them being ready for that first game, us having a deal over the line, quarantined, up to fitness, and up to speed with how the team's going to set up and play, is now really unlikely, isn't it?
When you put it in those terms as well, as we've spoken about, Amy, and you alluded to it first, I mean, it's an incredible state of affairs that Celtic have allowed this to happen, isn't it?
I'm thinking right now, the whole time that Russell's talking, we let our manager go. Our manager left in February.
Yeah.
We are in the 3rd week of June, and we're still talking about scrambling and, not even really, like I say, fundamentally not having a manager in the building in place right now. It's and
not having a team.
It's the realisation, isn't it? It's just like it all just comes really like flooding over you, and you're like, February, that's 4 months. 4 months we've sat and and again I lived through it, so like I know what happened, and at that time I know it was development. I think that perhaps the hindsight sometimes as well, now that we can look back, right, now that obviously the manager is in place, the worries and all of that is still not gone. And I appreciate I don't know, maybe there's that sort of like false illusion that the manager gets announced and perhaps that's like, right, everybody has a deep breath, there's a little bit of stability and steady in the ship, but the ship is still as shaky as it was. It's because it's as Russell's saying, it's like you bring an overseas player in and that's going to be 10 more days that they're going to have to isolate. So it's just everything's just getting chopped away. So I don't know, right now it's just still so underwhelming. And I know there's no point really, dwelling over it because there's nothing else you can really do. But it's not dwelling, it's still remembering that we allowed ourselves to get to this state. That it was February that Lennon left, and we are still in this sort of shape that we don't know what money we're getting for Edward, Ayer, Christie. We don't know who we're bringing in, player-wise. We've got no clue. The only real body that's still through the door is Liam Shaw, who I still don't have no idea who brought Shaw in then. We're talking about who's perhaps, talking about Oxford players and whatnot. Who brought in Shaw? Who scouted him? So it's I don't know. It's gunnerin right now, I think I'd say. And it's just like, wow, we are still in this position.
And one word, Remy, it's reality. This is Celtic's reality.
Yeah.
And the reality is hitting a lot of supporters now. As much as they got a buzz and they were optimistic and they're getting behind Ange Postecoglou and the new era, the new reign, great. Let's be positive about that and give him all the support he needs. Yep. But he's got an overwhelming job ahead of him.
Yeah.
And as much as it's underwhelming in fact that nothing's happening, it's overwhelming in fact what actually needs to be done when you're starting to break it down and what Celtic actually need moving forward. I mean, obviously he's brave enough to take it on, and it is arguably the biggest rebuild in the club in modern times. But if you're going to do that on the backdrop of downsizing, that makes it even more trickier and difficult. Russell, people accuse you of being negative. We're not being negative. We're being realistic. This is real. You're a month away and with one player in the door. We have a manager but no backroom staff. We have players who are rumoured to be wanting to leave, the three usual suspects. No bids have came in. So, and we're being linked with Oxford United players, whatever. There's still nothing concrete happens. It's all kind of speculation and hearsay, gossip, rumour, call it what you like, but nothing concrete is happening.
Yeah, and then
the manager's in London, and he went to see Scotland and England, and we're reliably informed that he's working away. Yeah, I mean, one of the other things that's dawning on me right now as well, and it is a world of reality we're living in here right now. No one's enjoying being negative. I don't have that. I'm a positive person, you know what I mean? We'll still win the league, but I mean, we've got 8 players at the Euros right now too. Yeah.
What break or respite are they getting before that European qualifier? What conditioning are they going to be in? Are going to have had ahead of the Midtjylland game? And you only need to look at Callum McGregor's display on Friday. I know Amy touched on it, but I was really, really encouraged by that. I thought he was absolutely wonderful. Like I said earlier on, better players play better with better players, and I just thought he was absolutely outstanding. How crucial is it to get a guy who's played more games in Europe than any other footballer over the last 5 years? How crucial is it going to be to get him back in the team for that first leg? And yet you've got to flip that and go, the concerns we've had over Callum McGregor have been because of exhaustion, because of fatigue, because of looking jaded. And yet that is going to be the best option right now that we've got. 8 players at the Euros, 29 days till the tournament. Incoming signings from abroad, 10 days quarantined. Wow, it is. No wonder Ralston got the new deal. We have cracked that, by the way, today. Just in our chat, the Ralston deal, I'm sorry, actually makes a heck of a lot more sense. I would like to think Lee Griffiths will be tied up in the next couple of days because, boy, oh boy, does he need a pre-season from the get-go again this year.
Russell, you mentioned those 8 players. We also need those 8 players to come through that tournament unscathed.
Oh, I know.
What if somebody gets clobbered? Right? Touch wood, they don't. But these things happen because they're playing football. What if somebody gets ruled out?
I know.
You know, a major injury or whatever, right? So you're hoping things go to plan and those 8 players come through the tournament unscathed and fit as well. You know, so there's a whole plethora, you know, of things that are just things that are happening that you just look and you think, why did it take us so long to sort this out? We've had 4 months, as Amy said there, 4 months, and it's come down to this. You're now cramming everything into a month. You're cramming more or less a whole season's worth of speculation into a whole month. Because you're having to speculate on how this team's going to do for the rest of the season. Well, up until January at least, and you can maybe make changes. But you're looking at that and just thinking, right, we've got a month to get a team in place that's going to be competitive, to wrestle the title back, to try and win the Champions League money, the automatic Champions League entry, for winning the title this season.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's not been negative. That's been realistic. This is exactly what's going to happen. And Amy, I'm like you. The odds are against that a wee bit. Well, time's against them, isn't it? That's the biggest commodity that's against Ange at the minute.
Absolutely, and time is against them. And I appreciate everything, that little rant that just spurred from me. It's because it's because it just doesn't feel real. And again, and I touched on it before we came on air, and I appreciate I will receive pelters for it as well. But I think really what needs to come into consideration is that this is my first major tournament with Scotland, and I have totally and utterly enjoyably invested myself in Scotland in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, and I really, and again, probably on a Celtic podcast, it's not the right thing to say, but I've just loved not having to prioritise Celtic in my life. You know, it's been so enjoyable taking
Wash your mouth out with vodka, girl.
Focusing on something a bit positive and a bit optimistic, something that has totally not happened this season. And it's not just me. It's my friends. I've got one of my really good friends is a Kilmarnock fan, so God love him. But he's been even more engrossed in this, and it's and I understand why, because it's that little bit of respite, So again, I think that's maybe why we're back. I'm talking about Celtic again, having to think of that Celtic state of mind, and that's why it's all hit me that this is the worrying state that we came to over the course of the last 4 months, and it's because I've managed to kind of park it to one side for the last 2 weeks and just go, you know what, it's going to work itself out. But it's not really going to work itself out, and just because I'm not actively thinking of it doesn't mean that mess still isn't just happening, and it's occurring, and while I'm watching, Callum McGregor put in an absolutely tremendous performance for Scotland, like you say, I'm not thinking about, oh my God, this guy's not getting a rest again, and this is who I didn't really want to play in the warm-up games for Scotland, the friendlies, because I'm like, please God, just give this man a rest. Then this time last week, I'm crying because he's not playing for Scotland, and then I'm like, he is getting that rest. So it's been probably the first time, and it's not even probably, it is the first time in my life that I've not had Celtic at the front of my mind, because I've never had Scotland at a major tournament or succeeding in any any form to take over as some sort of focus point and priority, and that is what happened. But like I say, it is not easy thinking about the state, basically the state that Celtic is in right now.
We'll throw another curveball at the Perry's then.
Okay.
Not curveball, but conflicting reports. Gordon Strachan is a DOF, yes or no? Russell?
The thing is, right, yeah, I would say yes, right, in terms of what I think his ability to do the job and what he can bring a football club, right? But I've got severe doubts again about how this is coming about. Like, is this really, forward-thinking modernisation of a football club if Gordon Strachan and his son are at the club, known mates of Peter Lawwell? If it's a City Group manager coming in that we know we did with Ronnie Dyla as well, who's funnily enough now managing another club in the City Group right now. It's all getting a wee bit lazy after the one time we showed ambition, we just hung on too long. See, just quickly as well, by the way, they were talking about like the short period of time we've got. One positive I'm going to take from this is it might force Celtic's hand to deal with transfer business how we've been wanting them to over the last few years, because they've not got the time to pussyfoot about anymore. It actually could be a good thing. We might start acting like, we need to get him. What do you want for him? We'll pay it. And maybe we'll see some more actual directness from Celtic in the transfer market that's been sadly lacking. So from that, we can take a wee positive there. As for Strachan, look, it's like we're saying about some of the players coming in. It might just have to be what does the job for now. But would it have been someone I would have thought would have been on this new era, as we're calling it, on the list of, then the Talking Head song comes to my head again of Once in a Lifetime, and that is same as it ever was, same as it ever was.
Amy, your thoughts on Gordon Strachan as a DOF?
It's most likely going to happen. I don't.
Modernising of the club.
Exactly, modernising of the club. I can't get on board with it while his son's part of the coaching setup. And I'm not saying that just if Gavin Strachan wasn't part of it, then I'd be like, all right, let's get Gordon Strachan in. Because as Russell says, it's not that step into modernising the way that we're trying to, wanting to take the club as a gain. And it's kind of just reiterating what Russell said, but no doubt that Strachan could do that job. This is an incredibly intelligent man and a fantastic knowledge of football. And, again, he's one of he's the first Celtic manager that I can remember, and the strip that was sponsored by Carlin, that deep dark green, I loved it. My brother had it, and it was just, that's the era that I really think back to. That was me first falling in love with Celtic. I've got plenty of happy memories with Gordon Strachan, and again, probably started the good stuff with Scotland as well. Probably gave me the first bit of hope, and it is the hope that'll kill you. But I don't believe that this is the right move in the right direction that the club should be going into, because it's just not the sort of stamp and standpoint that we're wanting to make, that we're going forward, that we're trying to step into that new era, that this is a total rebuild as we're bringing back a manager who was only at the club 15 years ago.
To continue Russell's theme, you may tell yourself, this is not my beautiful club. Is that what I was going to say end with a positive on Scotland, but we just got hit with the biggest negative there with the withdrawal of Billy Gilmour for the Croatia game due to COVID. It's such a Scottish thing to happen, isn't it? You could not beat that. We're up there after a tremendous performance display and a decent result against England, with Billy Gilmour prominent, and then all of a sudden he's out for the Croatia game. You couldn't make it up, but if you're Scottish, you could make it up, because it's the kind of things that happen to us. Amy, I'll come to you first, because you're up there with Scotland now, but I mean, you must have felt like crying when you read that the day.
Like you say, you've just got to laugh, otherwise you'll greet. It's so Scottish. Like you say, of course it was going to happen. It's here's us all talking about how much, right, we've got to keep that same starting 11 for the Croatia game, when we had a great shout. Everything just clicked on Friday, and now we get to this stage. So it's disappointing, there's no denying it. And now there's just going to be the whole talk, who comes in? Does Turnbull come in? Does Christie come in? Is it Armstrong? Do we move McTominay forward? There's just going to be so many if, buts and maybes. And it's just so deflating because, he's rightly receives all the plaudits. Like I say, that comes at the hand and the help of McGregor beside him, who really, he left that stage open for him. He'd done all the dirty work and really just put in a really stellar performance. But it's so disappointing for Gilmour as well. There's people there going, right, this is him in the starting 11 for forever now. He's got however long you want to say, a 15-year Scotland career in front of him. He can be breaking records left, right and centre with appearances, because that is a classic player playing well above his years. So it's so tough. It's so tough to take, because we just have that little bit of hope that, like I say, it's the hope that kills you. It's that little bit of optimism, and I have a little bit of belief that, wow, we could put in a performance tomorrow, because yet again, I wasn't really impressed by Croatia, and I'm still yet to be impressed by them. So it's a tough one. I think the shining light and the sort of positive and the only real hope he can take is that if it's any position that is going to happen, and we have got a ridiculously strong midfield, and there's going to have to be reshuffling around, and I've just got to hope that McGinn doesn't move to that deeper role, because that's the performance on Friday all came as well because McGinn was that further forward, that number 10 sort of role. He is terrific there. So as long as he remains there, and the rest behind, hopefully it will work itself out. But I'm still, I'm still buzzing.
Russell, can Scotland beat Croatia?
Absolutely, and I would just like to express my amazement and delight that he had absolutely no close contacts after testing positive for COVID at a camp, not too dissimilar to when it happened with Celtic. We had one player tested positive for COVID, but sadly for us, I think it was 13 players and the management team that had to sit it out for 10 days. But what a relief that was not the case, and what a miracle at one of these camps that there wasn't a close contact of Billy Gilmour. But we can all just breathe a sigh of relief at that news.
Russell Boyce there, clearly the brother of Lawrence Conley, speaking there.
That one was for Lawrence, definitely.
Well, really not. This has been the Monday Club. I've been Tony Haggerty. That's been Amy Canavan. He's been Russell Boyce. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Your stars.
Cheers.